Hello and welcome back to our series of interviews with Euros members. It's my great pleasure to introduce you today to Klaus Kremers, Palladium Mobility Group. Klaus and I have known each other for many years, and I was very lucky that Klaus served on the Euro board, so he knows very well how our industry works and how Euro's going. So it's really good to see you. How are you? And I guess my first question is, what is happening now in Germany?
Thanks very much for allowing me to speak today. It's an honor for me. The situation in Germany is like you're sitting in a sort of a mist. Nothing is going really further, and everybody is waiting, sitting like a rabbit in front of a snake. What will be next? And everybody is fed up of wearing masks when going outside, although this is the only protection we have at the moment. And the government has been dealing with the pandemic very well in the beginning, but now we are coming closer to elections. And there are some prime ministers of our states' governments who try to be the first, bringing liberations, bringing new ideas. There are two states in the former Eastern countries where they want to liberate everything from June 6th. Yeah, you must know, in the former Eastern countries, there are the older people, they all have vaccinations from the time before the borders opened. And this gives them a big advantage. And this advantage is that they do not have so many infections. When you look at the map of the German map, there are more green spots in the former Eastern provinces than in the rest of Germany, because of that vaccination advantage. Yeah.
That's extraordinary. I had no idea that that was the case. That must be a huge talking point in Germany. I mean,
it is, because there are two, Saxony and Thuringia, who want to do it. There was a meeting of the prime ministers of Germany scheduled for Wednesday, and it has been postponed because they have to rewrite the agenda because of these two prime ministers who are jumping into a direction that nobody really wants. And that makes it difficult.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, and from that point of view, I didn't know that there was that much autonomy, that much power can sit with those. Yeah.
And every state's prime minister can set up sort of their own rules. So they can say, we close the schools. We do not allow the hotels to open. We do not allow the restaurants to open up again. And the next one says, yeah, we have a strong beer industry. We want our beer gardens back, like in Bavaria, for example.
Yeah.
But then you have to, Munich. And so you imagine a beer garden where you have to keep the distance of 1.5 meters each. That's ridiculous. And that's not feasible at all. And this is what makes it so difficult, all the interests of the different states.
That is, I mean, and again, so when you're talking about, say, the Prime Minister of Saxony, are they, you say, again, there's an election coming up. Is this is something that they say, okay, we open up and get back to normal, that is seen as being popular, that people will vote for that because...
Yeah. Because it gives them back a lot of liberty. They will not need any more masks. They can go wherever they like. They can go to restaurants. Restaurants do not have to stick to certain hygienic rules and distance rules. And they want to roll everything back to normal, back to the beginning of the year. And This is what people like, especially in the Eastern countries. They are they have a little different political opinion, some of them, and they want to have those votes from the people who they are afraid to lose to some populists, to some right or left wings. They want to have them back, and this is why they want to do it.
I mean, it's fascinating because, again, I would assume that, you know, the national government is taking a lot of advice from, you know, your health professionals, your, you know, public health advisory bodies, who I'm assuming are saying, no, we need to stay.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Yeah.
And this is, but unfortunately, the state government or the German government is not allowed to rule into the states. This is the disadvantage of our federal system.
It's very interesting because, again, I've been talking with our members in the United States, and there is a similar political tension. It's an election year. Some of the governors want to open up states. Some of the governors want to keep the lockdowns in place. This is just not the time for those kind of politics, really.
Yeah, but it is, and the people, they are so tired of having their kids in homeschooling, and the infrastructure for homeschooling is not in place, and the families, they do not have the infrastructure at home. Not every child has its own computer. Even not every family has a computer. So what do? They cannot do homeschooling. And now they have one day a week or in every other week that they can go back to school. Slowly, but the kindergartens, they do not open yet. And so this means the people who are working from home have their kids at home as well. So they have that double function, and many of the modern parents are not used to taking care of their children anymore. Sorry to say that so blunt, but they do not know how to keep them busy all day and how to keep them quiet, and besides working and household.
Absolutely. I mean, both Bryony and Marie, who work normally in the Euro office, are working from home and homeschooling their children. And Bryony said to me just before we were supposed to be in Seville, she said, we thought the conference was hard work, but trying to work and keep my children entertained is difficult. I mean, it's not what we ever expected. That is really interesting, because I was going to ask you about the national mood, and it sounds from what you're saying like people are, because Germany did open up well, and a long time before a lot of other countries, but people are obviously kind of wanting that next step now, right?
Yeah. We had one step now 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when the restaurants were allowed to open. But when you look at a restaurant that can only seat 30% of the people they normally have, and so their income is just to keep their head above the waterline. They do not make any profit, and the government is in the step of deciding that they pay lower income taxes for what they are selling, but that does not, in the long run, that does not help them. And during the lockdown, some restaurants did a takeaway. And so they had their kitchen team working, and then they had set up measurements how you can collect it, and you ordered it online or by phone, and then you could pick it up, pay contactless with your credit card. And I spoke to the restaurant we were visiting last Wednesday, and the lady said, if we had not set up takeaway, we would have been gone from the market. They only opened up last year in October as a totally newbies, and their bank loans are bringing them to the edge. And she said, if we hadn't been able to deliver takeaway, we would have been gone from the market within less than 6 months.
I mean, and great, you know, good on them for doing that and being really entrepreneurial, because, you know, that's, I mean, I'm talking to friends of, you know, ours who work in hospitality or own hospitality businesses, the margins are bad at the best of times. So like you say, if you can only open up to 30% of your customers, you are not making money.
No.
And so in terms of what I mean, you're talking to me from your office. So, you know, you were saying to me before the call, you can cycle there, but are people happy to go back to work if they're using public transport?
A lot of people are happy to go back to work. Our team is, when we came to the lockdown, the team here in the Düsseldorf office, I offered them, okay, you can choose. Either you work from home or you come to the office. And the ones who do not use public transportation, they are lucky to come to the office, because sitting at home, working on a small laptop screen, it's even when you have a big computer at home, it is not the same as working in the office, where we have two wide screens next to each other, and you're sitting there like in a pilot's stand or whatever, and working is so much easier. And this is what the people who were not afraid of traveling public transport, they come by bike or by car, they come to the office, or they do it one day in the office, one day at home, so that they do not have to travel so often. And we have reduced our work to 50%.
Right.
And on the other hand, our Munich office, they have reduced their work to 25%, meaning that they work 2 hours a day. And part of them is working from home and part of them is working from the office, but preferably from home, because they all have to travel within Munich, and that's not as easy as in Düsseldorf, because Munich is much more crowded.
No, absolutely. I mean, that raises an interesting question, because you're saying you've gone down to 50% in Düsseldorf and you've gone down to 25% in Munich. Do you still have access to government support, financial support, to enable that?
The government funds the unemployment, or no, not the unemployment, but short-time work. This means that we pay, when you're on 50%, you get 50% of your salary from the employer, and the other 50%, 60% of that is paid by the government.
Right.
This means that the government pays that to the employer, and the employer pays it with salary to the employee, so that the administration is reduced to a minimum. So, but we are getting that money from the government with more than 1 month's delay, but we are getting it. Yeah.
Right. Wow.
And the contribution to Social Security is also, for that portion, is also covered by the government. And they are planning to increase this 60% to 70 after 4 months and 80 after 6 months.
Gosh, wow.
And this is for singles and couples. And when the employees have children, they get on top another 7%.
Okay, wow. Okay, so the government has been very proactive about supporting.
Yeah. They are very proactive, and it was in the beginning they gave supporting money to all businesses. When you're up to 5 employees, they gave you 5,000. Up to 10 employees, you had 15,000, and up to 25 employees, it was 20,000 or something like that. That the government funded, and it was a one-time payment. And okay, of course you have to pay taxes for it, but you don't have to pay it back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that was to cover the rentals, the leases, etc., cars or whatever you need, and also for salary, part of the salaries for the staff.
And tell me, I mean, are you getting any, because Germany was incredibly good at setting out milestones of when things would change and, you know, when things would move forward. Are you getting anything? You said at the beginning, it's like being in a mist at the moment. Are you getting any milestones about when things like borders might open or when planes might start flying again? Or
the borders have been opened now for Europeans.
Okay, amazing. That's great.
And they lifted the 14-day self-quarantine.
Did they?
Yes, and not like the UK who have set it up.
No. Until now, and now it's coming in next week, which just seems very strange.
Yeah, the third country nationals, they still have to go into the 14 days of quarantine, but the Europeans don't. And that makes it a lot easier. That was about 1.5 weeks ago. And when it was open, then a lot of Germans traveled to the Dutch coast for a long weekend. Right. And the Dutch were not happy with that. You may imagine being flooded by tourists.
Yeah. That is very interesting. I mean, and it's inevitable. We've been going through this for a long time. But so does that mean now that there are some controls about, you know, leaving the country to go to, you know, other places?
Yeah, we can leave the country, but as we said before, there are travel limitations. You can go by car. There are a few flights, but what I helped a customer last week who had to go back to China with his family, and they needed rush visa, and they are flying out today on a charter flight which has been organized by the German-Chinese Chamber of Commerce. There are no regular flights going into China, and normally when you have left China, although you have a valid visa there, you are not allowed to come back unless you have a new visa on this special permission, like on this charter flight from the Chamber of Commerce. We are waiting for a lot of customers or transferees coming from third countries who have, part of them have already signed a lease agreement, but they cannot move it. And okay, a lease agreement is fixed and it cannot be notified before it starts. And then only after it started, you can notify it with the 1, 2, or 3 months notice period, which depending on the contract. Nobody knows when the borders will open up again and when they will be able to fly. Lufthansa is planning to increase their number of flights from middle of June or beginning of July. But this will be mainly here within Europe or in shorter distances, only very few long distance flights, so that all these transferees waiting now in India, China, in America, they do not have a chance to travel.
And are you seeing any intra-European activity now? Are you able to assist people on intra-European transfers?
Yeah. We had a group of Italians coming from Lombardia, whom we helped. In the beginning, they had to go into quarantine, but this has been released now. But landlords were not very fond of having Italians from Lombardia in their properties. That's understandable. Consultants were not happy to meet them and accompany them to property viewings. And property viewings, they are very limited when you have the 2 people rule, where you have the existing tenant the prospective tenant, and that's it. You cannot have a realtor or a property manager or a relocation consultant visit in there. They have to wait outside and wait for results and getting feedback then after it. Or what we also did for some customers, we did the video. The video viewings we did for, in the beginning we said we only do it for singles or couples, because for families it is difficult with the environment and the surroundings, if there are playgrounds, if it is what parents expect for their children. But now more and more families are also interested in that kind of viewing. But for that, it really needs experts, consultants who have children on their own, so that they know what they have to look for. You cannot take a consultant for these families who doesn't have kids, because they look at it from a different angle. And
yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting. I did a briefing session with Alistair Murray and Andrew Scott and Martina and Gordon on the weekend. And, you know, what came out of that was Alistair saying, you know, we're actually, the services that you're delivering currently and that, you know, the Euro members are going to be delivering as we start to open up are actually going to be much more high touch. Are the clients aware of that? You're feeding that back to them and saying, look, this is actually becoming a much lengthier process, a much more involved process.
Yeah, it needs much more. Yeah, it is changing. You have to prepare better, and you have to take some decisions on behalf of the customer, of the transferee, and this is what we are not used to at all. We didn't have to do that in the past, and it's a high risk also. But we are forced to do so, otherwise we cannot do our business at all, and people cannot come because they cannot. I have a gentleman sitting in China. He said, I would love to come and look for a property for my family, and they have 3 kids, 2 dogs, and 3 cats, and they would love to know when they are moving, but they cannot. They can get out of China, but they cannot go back. And so this pre-visit trip or look and see that we had in the past is obsolete at the moment.
Yeah.
And this is and we do the home search then with those high-tech ways. So there is a complete change also in the industry.
Completely. But it's interesting how, to me, it just highlights even more now how incredibly valuable the services that, you know, the Euro members deliver are. I mean, now more than ever, you know, those services are so important to people being moved.
Yeah, and the expertise sitting behind it. It is not just, you could also ask a colleague to do the video and go through a house, but they do not see it with the same eyes we do, because we look at the pitfalls that colleagues would normally not do, and this is what makes it so valuable.
Klaus, it's been fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'd love to catch up again in a month or so and see where we are, again, how your services are developing, because I think that's one of the key conversations that I'm having with a lot of the members right now is, you know, what are we doing? How are we preparing for, you know, these much higher levels of policy and delivery and all of that stuff. So thank you for highlighting that. Klaus, great to see you, as it always is. Lovely to catch up. In the meantime,
thank you.
We'll get together again in July, but at the moment, stay well and stay safe, and great to see you.
Stay safe too, and give my regards to Dad.
I will indeed. All the best to you and your team.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.